Hello and welcome to another episode of So Fly. It's the middle of September, and we're back in the studio today. I'm recording out of the Hive once again. My name is Mitch, and we've got Aldo here.
Hello.
We've got Yilma.
Hello.
And we have a very exciting guest on the show today. Somebody we've been really interested in trying to get on the show for a long time. Mark Kingwell is a philosophy professor at the University of Toronto, a critic, a fly angler, and an author. He's published a number of books, most notably to us, Catch and Release, Trout Fishing and the Meaning of Life, and also Classic Cocktails, a Modern Shake. Love good cocktail. Mark, we're super excited to have you on the show today. Thanks for coming by.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
What are we drinking, actually? Because we're having a couple drinks. It's mid-afternoon. There's no cocktails right now, but we are having some 40 Creek.
Yeah, we're having some 40 Creek Copper Pot Canadian whiskey.
It's a bit like having a flask on the river and taking a nip or two. You know,
Exactly.
It's not cocktail hour yet, but you know.
Yeah.
It's a warm up to cocktail hour.
Yeah, there you go.
That's how I first, I remember when Mitch was saying that Mark was coming on the show, and I was like, I know that name, and I read the cocktail book before the fishing book. So, it's cool. It's cool to meet you. That's a good. I enjoyed that book. I kept it as a reference for my staff, quite often.
Great.
And it was just like, because you usually find cocktail books written by Americans, not too many Canadians. So it was kind of neat, like having something.
And I should say that book, if people can still find it, is designed and decorated by Seth, who is a great Canadian illustrator, has a studio.
Yeah, the illustrations are
practice
amazing.
in Guelph.
Oh, nice.
And has created a whole kind of Canadian mythology in his town called Dominion. So you can't get more Canadian than Seth and me doing a cocktail book. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, and it was also Catch and Release. Before we were recording here, we're just talking about how I found that book years ago in the chapter section, and it was just an absolutely awesome read. So I think when we started this podcast, I was like, oh, Mark's one of the guys we got to try to get on the show for sure to talk about it, because it was like a largely successful book. A lot of people I know read it and talk about it all the time.
Yeah, it started really I was living in New York at the time, and it started as an article I wrote for the National Post. And it was about going to British Columbia and fishing with my younger brother, Sean, and our father. And I was totally against doing this. I didn't want to do it. So some of the titles of the chapters in the book are, fishing is stupid and golf is stupid and all the things that my brothers and my dad have always liked to do, manly pursuits. As the intellectual in the family, I'm like, oh, come on, you guys got to be kidding. I'm not into that. So I went out there partly to be with my dad, who was getting on at the time. He was in his 80s, and just kind of fell in love with fly fishing. So the book is very much a beginner's book. I mean, I think when I look at it now, there are a lot of technical details that I've learned more about. Mm-hmm. And I've continued to write about fishing in different places, Gray's Sporting Journal and Queen's Quarterly and other places. And I like the French translation of the book includes some of those later pieces, which is actually really nice because it kind of contextualizes the early and the late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you wrote the book and before you went on the trip, what were your first initial reactions to fly fishing and the sport?
I think like a lot of people at the time, especially, so this is now 2002. Mm-hmm. I was highly conditioned by the Brad Pitt movie, right? River Runs Through It.
Yep.
The Brad Pitt movie. Yeah, the Brad Pitt movie. I mean, there's so many Brad Pitt movies, but some fly guides call it just the movie. Because they're constantly having novices come out and say, I saw the movie. And I really want to learn how to fish with flies. So I had that whole kind of spiritual aspect of it. And that stuff in the middle about him being an artist and shadow casting and all the things. And there's actually, in one of the places that we've gone in Montana, there's a poster for the movie. And it shows Brad Pitt standing on a rock, and he's got his, his rod up and his line out, and the line is at a literally impossible angle. Like there is no possible way that any line could be in the air the way that it's depicted in this poster. Yeah. So it really is mythological, Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was conditioned by that, and then childhood memories. Mm-hmm. My father had been a bait fisherman, spinner. For a long time, and then he kind of gave it up. And when I was little, like 10 or 11, 12, he would take me along kind of as a, gopher and servant. And I remember that I talk about this in the book. There's this one incident that's printed on my mind. We're in Prince Edward Island, and he was fishing for, I guess, probably bass. And he sent me back to the car to get this tackle box that he'd forgotten. And I tripped and fell on the way back, and I rolled down this little declivity, and the box fell open, and all of these hooks, hooked into me. And I'm lying there, and I think I can't even move, because if I move, they're going to go in deeper.
Yeah.
So I'm just lying there.
It's just motionless.
Yeah, completely abject and humiliated.
Yeah.
So that was my earliest memory of fishing.
That's a great first memory. Yeah. I mean, I can't see how you didn't get into it sooner. So whereabouts was that? Like, where were you guys? Where'd you sort of like grow up fishing?
So my father was in the Air Force, and he was posted all over the place. So that was Prince Edward Island. We lived in Nova Scotia, and he fished there. Yeah. We lived in Western Ontario near London, and there's some fishing out there. He never fished flies, though. It was my brother, when he moved to Vancouver, probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, he started fly fishing out there.
Yeah.
And, for a lot of people, if they haven't fished in British Columbia, a lot of it isn't what you think of as classic. I mean, some of it is, like streams and, walking up and down, casting. But a lot of it is on lakes where you're trolling, basically.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's a good introduction. Mm-hmm. So that was the first fly fishing I did. We're using spratlys and black leeches and stuff like that. And sometimes chironomids. So you're actually casting and setting the hook. But for the most part, you're just kind of moving around the lake.
Waiting for something to hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember your first fish on the fly rod?
Yeah, I do. It was a rainbow nice. on this lake near Kelowna in British Columbia. And it was, a beautiful rainbow. We pulled out lots of beautiful rainbows in that lake all the time. But my first, I think, impressive fish, or the one that I like the most as my first fish, is the one it was in Ontario. It was on the Grand River, and I got a brown.
Yeah. And
the picture of that is on the cover of Catch and Release.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it is a beautiful brown. It must be 15, 16 inches and, just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what I was doing. I had a nymphing rig on with, a couple of pieces of lead shot, and it was just kind of swatting around, and I'm like, suddenly I've got something on there, and we were in maybe 18 or 25 inches of water. It was just,
Oh, I love the Grand for that
Yeah.
type of fishing, It's just classic Southern Ontario brown trout sort of fishing. Well, that's an interesting foray into fly fishing, absolutely. I mean, but you also just recently returned from the trip that you speak about in the book, Catch and Release, right?
Yeah.
And it's been going strong for
17 years.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And I've missed a couple of years for different reasons. My younger brother is the anchor. He's been there every year.
Yeah.
And actually, he was going to this place in British Columbia before we made it a kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, 17 years, family and friends. And actually, I think next year we're probably going to go back to that lake.
Yeah.
And maybe even get my father, who has lately been housebound, to come along, which would be great.
Yeah.
18 years. We're trying for 20, but he might not last that long. My dad, my brother should be fine. But yeah, 17 years. And always British Columbia or Montana.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
We've talked about other places. We talked about going to Scotland or having the BC boys come here to Ontario. But it's just so nice to be on these streams and rivers out there,
Yeah.
So the last one this year, we were on the Elk River near Fernie in BC, actually quite close to the Montana line.
Yeah.
And that's a great river for trout. Mostly cutthroats. In fact, all we caught were cutthroats.
Yeah.
Really, really fantastic. And we did the usual mix. We did a lot of walk and wade, and then we always do one guided float trip for the deeper part of the river. And it's just fantastic. I think I must have landed 30, 35 in a week.
Wow, that's awesome.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
It's good.
Any notable, like really big cutties down there?
Yeah. There were. We were trying all kinds of things. Mostly, so it was early August. So terrestrials, beetles, ants. Sometimes even bees were working, little bee patterns. And then when the guys got frustrated, they went nymphing. I tried to stay, with dries the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we got. Seriously, on the float trip, I think I got 8 or 9 really beautiful cutties, all at least 14 inches.
Yeah.
Wow. And just really sweet, you know.
Floating down one of those rivers must be so awesome.
Yeah.
The Elk's beautiful. I've always wanted to go to Fernie.
Yeah.
Would be sweet.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's great.
Beautiful.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's in the summertime, it's all fly fishing. In the wintertime, it's all skiing. It's just one of those towns that,
Yeah.
you know, everybody lives to play.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
it is. Yeah.
I've always felt like if I go out there, we still haven't been with SoFly, especially. We need to go and do a trip out there. I've always thought if I go, I'm not going to want to come back.
You probably won't. Like, it's tough coming.
You know?
It's tough leaving Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mountains and stuff.
Montana's great. You know, I've been thinking about it for a long time because we've been going there for over 10 years. And it's a very interesting place. I mean, politically, it's kind of strange, right? Because it's right wing, but it's right wing libertarian. So it's not Trump land.
Yeah.
It's more like self-reliance land. So everybody there owns a rifle, at least one, and the big deal is shooting your first elk or deer, and you know, cleaning and dressing it on the trail, and then taking out the meat and you put it in the freezer for the winter. I mean, it's
a way of life.
It's a way of life.
Yeah.
And I admire those people tremendously. They have virtues that those of us who live in cities have kind of forgotten, you know.
Yeah.
I'd like to know more about.
Yeah.
I was actually, this is kind of a segue to a different thing, but I wanted to buy a rifle.
Yeah.
Because I just bought some land in New Hampshire near where my wife's family lives.
Land in New Hampshire. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of a tough choice because we have wanted to buy something there for retirement or whatever.
Yeah.
But couldn't find a house that looked right. And then this parcel of land came open, and it's near 3 really great lakes for bass and trout.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Bonus.
okay, so that's, I'm in.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
And it's really cheap, you
Yeah.
know.
No, that's
so
the thing. Eh? Nice.
and I thought I need a rifle.
Yeah.
So I call these guys up at the gun shop and I say, you know, I want a 30-06 bolt action.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we have that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Come in anytime.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law doesn't like this idea, but I'm going to have a rifle.
Yeah.
If I'm living in New Hampshire, I'm going to have a rifle.
You have to have one. Just
Yeah.
Would
Not,
you-
not an assault weapon, just
No.
a single shot, you know, bolt
Yeah.
action, small magazine. So just for the people out there who know that I'm anti-gun on the whole,
Yeah.
it's just for, you know, household use.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when I was in Montana last November, and we were hosted by a friend of ours, Chloe, and it's you know, I couldn't agree more. It's just a way of, like, she was making us a deer stew from the deer that she had shot, and she was like, oh man, I'm almost out of meat, it's almost time to go harvest another deer.
Right.
Because for her, I mean, she's 22, 23, 24, something like that.
Yeah.
And then she just drives out to the hills and harvests a deer and cleans it herself and lives in her, 1-bedroom apartment in Livingston. And it's like just the way of life.
There's
there.
something special about it, you know? And you're absolutely right about the city. It kind of takes it away from you. And when you get to experience it, and we get to through fly fishing, it's just like, oh man, something so nice about this.
You really feel it, when you're walking on through a field and then you get into the water.
Yeah.
Especially in the summer, I like to do wet wading. I don't wear waders. I just go with cargo shorts and boots. And so you've got water up to your waist, and the stream or the river's flowing around you, and you feel the power of it. You have to respect it. And there's nothing better than that. And it just smells better. You know? The air is like champagne out there. So,
Such a great way of putting it.
The air is champagne.
Man, we, what is it, a couple weeks ago, we went up to Timmins just to do a little hang out at this and teach some fly fishing at this festival. And we got off the plane, and it's just like, oh my God, the air is just, even up in Northern Ontario, it's just so much better.
Just
you
crisp.
know?
Yeah. It's crisp. It's alive.
Yeah. You kind of forget it in the city because, I mean, the air is not bad here, but it's just a whole different thing when you're in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. So how often are you getting down to the New Hampshire, the new homestead?
Well, that's kind of a long-term plan. We go down at least twice a year. So I fish there for bass usually. And there's a little lake where the family has some frontage, so we can put in there anytime we want. I usually go out in a kayak or a canoe.
Yeah.
Nice.
And use my 2-weight or sometimes the 5-weight and throw little poppers.
Yeah.
And sometimes, Again, black leech patterns, woolly bugger will work.
Yeah.
Prince nymph if you get a little desperate, because anybody will take that. So yeah, it's really good fishing, and
That's so awesome.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice to have a little slice of somewhere you could go that's just wild and special.
Don't
Yeah,
know if I've ever been to New Hampshire.
well, I don't think people think of it as a fly fishing destination, but you can fish for anything on flies. So that's what I do. I mean, the guys come out on their big boats, and they have honking,
Oh yeah.
double, triple hook, Rapala lures and whatever. And yeah, they're going to land bass on that or worms.
Yeah.
But you get a tiny little popper, and you move it across the water, and you get one of those big guys to come up for it. That's really exciting. to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially on a 2-weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little Reddington
Yeah,
2-weight.
my
That's
Reddington
awesome.
2-weight has become my favorite rod. Used to be my favorite rod was this Sage 5-weight that my spouse gave me, and I still love that.
Yeah.
But it's actually too much rod for some of this sport.
Yeah.
It is great for, say, steelhead. Actually, it might not be enough for steelhead. I might want the 8-weight or the 9-weight, but the 2-weight is just, it feels like it doesn't have any power, but it really does have some guts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think when people hear like, oh, 2-weight, it's like, oh, that's so light. But no two rods are made equally. Like some 2-weights or 3-weights are like, they have a back to them, It's more like a 4-weight or a 5-weight type of rod.
Yeah.
But that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Nice little ponds and things like that, fishing largemouth.
Yeah, and there's actually about 7-8 miles away from I call it the compound, where my wife's in-laws live. They own like the whole top of a hill.
Awesome.
There's a lake, well, small lake, that's all granite side.
Yeah.
And they call New Hampshire the Granite State. So you get these rock formations, and there's just one place where you can put in. No fuel powered boats are allowed on there, so you either human, or you can have a trolling motor, electric motor. And I've caught some rainbows in there that are just amazing. And it's the you can see all the way down to the bottom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Like the
Those
Bing.
Granite Lakes. Yeah, like the Bing. I don't know if you've ever fished out near Ottawa or Westport. That's where we learned to fly fish, because Aldo and I are both from there. And there's a rainbow lake there that's kind of like that. It's so cool. I love fishing on lakes for rainbows. Oh, man. So cool.
I think I
So
go to
cool.
BC, man. That's like that's where it's at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and BC is great because you can do the lake fishing and you can do the river fishing, maybe even in the same day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Certainly on the same trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the big thing. One of the things we want to do is go to Calgary for a few days and then drive to Montana for a few
Visit Chloe.
days.
Yeah.
And just do a
Right.
trip out of that.
Right. So, on this trip, we flew to Calgary and then drove to Fernie.
Right.
Nice.
And then on the way back, we were rushed for time to catch planes, but there were guys out on the bow
Yeah.
all the way up the highway. And so you could do that in reverse, right? Just go down, stop whenever you want, fish the bow, keep going, and then you hit northern Montana, and it's paradise there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Bow's great. The Bow's a great river.
Yeah. It looks like a beautiful river. I know you fished it last year, and
Yeah.
the pictures looked amazing.
Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
super fun. So after that first trip, did it take more convincing?
That's a good question. I think about that now, and it's hard for me to recall because the first thing I did when I got back to New York was write this article. And it was kind of like, the article was, I didn't think I would like fishing. I kind of liked fishing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like
Yeah, because I think that first trip was a lot about camaraderie, and all the guys in my family and all of my brother's friends are really good cooks. Some of them are professional cooks. They work for restaurants in Vancouver. So the meals were spectacular, and the company, and wine and whiskey and whatever. It was all great. So I was having a hard time separating that from whether I actually liked the physical part of fishing, like fishing as fishing. But by the time the next summer rolled around, I was totally ready to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I knew that I'd been bitten by the bug.
Nice.
Yeah, you think about it in a different way when you get back. Like when you're at the end of a trip, oftentimes you're kind of just tired and you're like, it was fun and everything. But then you think about like the feeling of the rod in your hand and the casting. You're just like, oh yeah, no, that's sick. I can't wait to do that again.
Yeah. And then there's there's a long winter, unless you're going for steelhead on Lake Ontario or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's still long.
It's still
even
long.
when you do that, it's long.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of my buddies, they tie over the winter, right? Which is a poor substitute for actually fishing. Although I get it. It's like, okay, I'm gonna tie a bunch of flies so that I can use them when the season opens in May or whenever, right? But it's
not the same.
It's not the same. And I guess one of the reasons I write about fishing is partly that same thing, which is, if I can't be fishing, then I can be thinking about fishing.
Yes.
And writing about it and what it means to me. And this is a well-tilled area of literature, but there's still always more to say about how I don't want to be too mystical about it, but the spiritual dimension of fishing and how it opens up your sense of yourself and your relationship to the natural world and to other people, and the kind of contemplative space that it allows you to be in. I really think that's important. And, I'm a philosopher, so my thoughts naturally tend in that direction.
Yeah.
I think my younger brother is more like, just like, come on, that's just bullshit. I'm out here to catch fish, don't give me this spiritual reflection stuff. But I think both things are possible,
Oh, totally, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I want to catch fish. I'm not out there just to wave my rod around and think, Yeah.
I think a lot of, fly anglers, every fly angler I've met speaks about it in a similar way. They just have different words to describe it, right? But like you can hear when someone talks about like, why do you like fly fishing? And they describe like the way the water feels around their leg and like all of those more, meditative things. It's like, okay, they're talking about the spiritual side of it and the meditative side of it, right? Yeah. But
and I think, and I said this in Catch and Release, it really, for I think all of us, it begins with the cast.
Yeah.
And learning how to cast.
Yeah.
And I spent hours on this float in the middle of a lake in New Hampshire, just, getting wind knots in my line over and over again, like just, and having terrible like slackapalooza is what I call it, when the line just drops.
Yeah.
And then you just start to feel it. And when you feel it, there's nothing else like it. And I think if you're a spinner or, a spoon fisherman, you don't get the same thing because it's just a throw. And you don't get the rhythm, and extending the line with every false cast and then shooting. I think there's nothing else, in my experience, there's nothing else like it.
No, yeah, it's true. There's something of just about casting that's fun.
Yeah.
Which is great because like steelhead season's coming up and I'm not going to catch anything. So it's a good thing I like casting because it's 10-hour days of that. So.
Oh, come on. You got one steelhead last year.
That's true. Actually, I did.
Did you?
I got one and I hooked another one and I was able to go out 2 times last year.
Where were you on the credit?
It was on the Grand.
On the Grand.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we swing down there near a bunch of stretches in the Grand. But it's been years of just like, oh man, so much work just trying to like figure out how to do this. So this year was that first time I was like, whoa, 2 outings, 2 fish. Nice. It's starting to like come up. And Aldo got a beautiful fish on New Year's Day last year, New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah, on the Grand.
Yeah.
Or the credit, actually. Yeah.
And I got a spring.
You did?
They always forget about me.
You did?
You did?
Did
you get one?
On the swing?
Yeah.
A spring steelhead on the Maitland.
Did you? Well, that was you.
Oh my God.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Was that you?
But it's funny you talk about the failure rate.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, he used to fish for salmon, and so he'd be on the big rivers in New Brunswick and classic salmon fishing. And he finally caught one, I think, after like 8 years of getting skunked.
Yeah.
And he calculated how much it cost him to land that one fish.
That's an awesome thought. Yeah. And he was probably terrified with it.
Yeah.
It's not inexpensive.
No.
Yeah.
Like the licenses. I just got back from a salmon fishing trip, and the daily rates are they're expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, to access those rivers. Yeah.
So when you don't get one, it's like, dang.
I know. I was lucky enough to land 2, and this guy at the cap, at the cabin. He was like, "Oh, did you get anything?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Man, I've been fishing for these things for like 7 years and I haven't caught one yet." And I was like, my first trip I landed to, and I was like, "Yeah, totally."
Yeah.
I was amazed.
You should keep that quiet. 'Cause
Yeah, exactly.
somebody might murder you in your sleep.
Yeah.
I was fishing in England, and very, very sort of Tony place, chalk stream.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And so really, really old school, like Isaac Walton old school.
So cool.
And this guy at dinner was swanning around the dining room, this very, very nice hotel where we all stayed. They had all the beats that you could fish. And so we had to stay there. And he'd caught an 8-pound brown trout. And so
What?
I didn't believe it.
Patagonia?
But we went into the room, the tackle room, and there this honking thing was.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it turned out that the ghillie, the guide, had hooked the thing and then handed the rod to him.
Right.
And it's like, well, you didn't really catch it.
That happens a lot on the salmon rivers too. The guides will hook the fish for it and then pass,
Really?
pass it over to the clients.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's,
I have a similar experience. But I wasn't fly fishing, and this was when I was a lot younger.
But your dad hooked a largemouth
No,
and handed you
a
the
guide in Cuba. I got a couple mutton snappers on my line, but he was fishing as well, and he caught. So he wasn't just guiding me; he was obviously fishing, and he hooked a tarpon, and then he gave me the rod, and
Nice.
then I reeled it.
Hey, you know
But this
what?
was that was spin. That was
spinning.
spin fishing. Yeah.
I also, with deep sea, you got the outriggers out anyway. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not
not
like,
really.
Yeah.
You're not really
You've never
doing
really
it.
done anything.
it's exciting, but
That's something I've never done.
you
would
should
like
do
to
it.
do- I would love to do that.
It is fun because you can pull in all kinds of great things.
bet.
Yeah.
Imagine a marlin. Imagine that. Wow.
Well, I've never had a marlin, but I've tuna and
Whoa.
dolphin fish
Oh,
and
nice.
wahoo.
Yeah.
They all fight like demons.
Oh yeah.
So
Be cool to catch a dolphin fish. Eh?
I know.
Man.
yeah. Well,
They're so beautiful.
and then you can eat them.
And they're tasty too.
They're beautiful, and then they die, and then you eat them.
Oh, so tasty.
Yeah.
So you talked about guns. I think it's interesting, actually, like just to talk about that a little bit more, and just the idea of having a rifle and living in that sort of lifestyle. Are you going to be hunting at all? Like, do you do any hunting?
I'm not sure I have an interest in hunting. I think I might become interested.
Yeah.
Just because in that area, like a lot of parts of the Northeast in the U.S. and Ontario too, the whitetails are actually overpopulated.
Right.
So you're not doing any environmental damage. On the contrary, you might actually be helping with the cull. I have a hard time convincing anybody else in my family about this, but I think that actually is a valid argument. And if it's for food, right? If you're not just doing it to gratify your male ego, then I think there's the argument gets even stronger. So yeah, I would certainly consider it. And if you take it down to basics, I'm not sure I would ever go to say bow hunting, which is people think is like the closest thing other than sneaking up on the deer with a knife. To an equal battle, but a single shot rifle, I don't know. I think I might do that.
Yeah. And when it comes to fishing, catch and release is the name of your book, but is it also a thing you practice as well?
Yeah, I mean, there are places. So the lake in British Columbia where we have been going to, Beaver Lake, it's called, gets regularly restocked. So we pull out sometimes there, and not a ton, like maybe 3 or 4 fish a day, and eat them. But mostly yes, catch and release, and absolutely with the cutties on the elk, with the browns on the Grand, of course. And there are some places, actually this is true of the elk, single barbless hook only and only release.
Right.
And in upstate New York, I've fished the Ausable.
Oh, nice.
I love
and
it.
Love
that's
that
favorite.
river.
yeah.
So beautiful.
That's where I fell and almost died because I dislocated my shoulder and rolled into the river.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
It's a tough one to wade.
It is.
That's not an uncommon story for that area.
I know.
But
So the funny thing is that happened to me and then I was writing about it for Gray Sporting Journal, and I came across this piece by Tom McGuane, great fishing writer. And he said, you want to fish the Ausable before you're 40 because all of these rocks are about the size of small automobiles and they're covered with slippery moss.
Yep.
And I had turned 39 the day that this happened,
Nice.
or the year that this happened. And it's true. I mean, it's a really, really
It is.
tricky river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I fell on the river, and I was fishing with a bamboo rod, and it broke my fall, which isn't great because it cracked the varnish on the bamboo rod. And I was like in the middle of this river, frustrated already because I was like fishing a trico hatch and I didn't know what was going on. And I fell and cracked the thing, and I'm just standing in this river. I'm just like, no,
Yeah.
But it's because it's a hard one to walk.
Yeah, it's really tough.
But
and
it's so beautiful.
when I fell, I was trying to sort of move from one rock to another to get to a pool, and I slipped. My boot slipped, and I hit really hard on my shoulder, and then I rolled back into the water. And that's when I was wearing these old dumb hip waders, like
Yeah. Oh,
Canadian Tire hip waders, and they filled with water right away. And I'm being pulled down-river, and I'm thinking,
man.
okay, this is really not good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I've got one inoperable arm.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to hold on to my rod for some stupid reason because it's the sage that my wife gave me.
Right.
Yeah, I'd hold on to it.
Not the sage.
Yeah, not the sage.
Yeah.
Save the sage.
I'll die before I lose this rod.
And I managed to get out. And then it was like, I have to take the waders off and just I left them.
Yeah.
And I walked barefoot back to my car,
Yeah.
like 2 miles.
Probably looks so insane.
Well, I know, yeah. But I'm holding the rod with my,
Yep.
and when you have a dislocation, it's like you can't, there's no comfortable position. I get into the car and, cosmic joke, it's a standard.
Oh, God.
Right. So I'm shifting with my left hand.
That's awesome.
And I got to the hospital and, survived to tell the tale. But this is the thing. People don't think of fly fishing as anything except, gentle and whatever.
Yeah.
But, if you're on a river,
yeah.
things can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big
I know
time.
that well.
Pretty quick.
Yeah.
The first time I went steelheading with Yilma, we were walking down the riverbank, and he had he was wearing a pair of boots that were really slippery on the bottom, and he slipped down the bank and broke a rod immediately. And it was like the
Immediately,
first 2 minutes of the day. It's just like great.
I still fished. But whatever.
Shit happens, man. With fly fishing, stuff happens. It
Yeah.
goes wrong.
Yeah.
I mean but the arm is like, geez, that's pretty hard.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
That was the worst. I've fallen a couple of other times. I've, cut my shins and stuff,
Yeah.
but that was the worst.
Yeah.
The getting into the I like that imagery of you getting into the car and being like, and just staring at the
Yeah.
gear shift, being like,
Bare feet with gravel embedded. And
Yeah,
okay, now I have to start the car and shift with my left hand and find a hospital.
Awesome. Oh, man. So do you ever think about, I know, being a philosopher and also a fly angler, do you ever think about the ethics of fly fishing?
Yeah, and I tried to deal with some of the issues in catch and release.
Yeah.
And partly it was about releasing. And I think releasing is pretty straightforward, even when it's not, posted as single barbless and release. Mm-hmm. If you're mindful of ecosystems, this is true in Montana. There are lots of places there where you can pull fish out if you want, but most of the anglers there just put them back because they know that on the the far side of the Rockies, the cutty population is threatened, and the browns are okay, and the cutbows are okay, but you just have to respect the population. Mm-hmm. I think the most basic issue though is catching fish at all.
Yeah.
And are we doing it, doing something that's cruel for our own entertainment or amusement or something like that?
Yeah.
And I don't buy arguments that fish don't feel pain. I think that's when my dad was an angler, that's what he would say. It's like, fish don't feel pain, so don't worry about
It's
it.
a classic.
Yeah. They clearly prefer not to get caught.
Yeah.
that is abundantly clear.
thing, right?
Yeah.
We all try to justify it with this pain thing, but
Yeah. Yeah. I always think of David Foster Wallace. Late David Foster Wallace has this great article about lobsters. He goes to Maine for some lobster festival. And he's saying, nobody thinks about lobsters the way they think about dogs and cats and horses and dolphins. They don't really think of them as subject to animal rights debates. But clearly the lobster has preferences.
Yeah.
And one of its preferences is not to be boiled to death.
yeah.
And so when you think about it that way, clearly a trout's preference is not to be hooked by something metal and pulled out of the water.
Yeah.
So I guess what it comes down for me is I'm mindful of that, and I try to be respectful of the fish. And, in a way, it's a gift to be able to, take something from that environment and just even for a few seconds, have a look at it and then put it back. And if we're good anglers, we're not doing damage. Bad anglers do damage. And that's one of the things that you have to teach people is how to be a good angler, for how to treat your fish when you hook them.
So working through the ethics of it really comes down to like practices.
Yeah.
Like how we're fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously.
I think so. I mean, net technology, for example, has advanced. So now we have these rubber nets that are much better for the fish. They cradle the fish. The hooks come out right away. You get the fish back in the water in, literally seconds. It's just a gift. And then you restore the equilibrium. So ethically, I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And the joy, the happiness it gives me is pretty considerable. So when you think of all the other kinds of environmental footprints that we leave, it's pretty small.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, it actually like inspires us to care more, right? I mean, I feel like that's one of the biggest things for me in keeping fly fishing is just that idea of like, and teaching other people to do it too, is just that idea of like, I care a lot about brook trout, and I can't say that for many people that I know that aren't anglers, like they're not thinking about brown trout in the same way, right? We're obsessing about it.
But there are these things, you see people posting on Instagram, they're holding up a fish by the hook, it's like, well, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like cradle the thing, get the hook out. I mean, it's just common sense, really.
Yeah.
You don't want to hurt the fish.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I think I haven't introduced anybody to the sport. Although my younger brother, his son, my nephew, we've taken him out a few times, and he's a bit squeamish.
Yeah.
For reasons like this. He doesn't like to see the fish struggling. And my spouse the same way. She won't fish with me anymore.
Yeah.
She used to, but
She won't do it.
yeah, she just finds it unnerving, I guess, to see the fish on the hook.
Yeah.
And I say, look, just think about how this is happening, right? So we're bringing the fish in as smoothly as possible, not horsing it. Bring it in, get it out of the water, maybe take a picture, get the hook out, get it back in. I mean, it's really not that bad.
No. Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. I mean, and then barbless hooks.
Yeah.
The net technology, all that
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
that
I
we're
mean,
talking about.
if you're fishing with a barbless hook, this happened a lot in BC just the last month. You put that fish in one of those new nets and the hook comes right out.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Right out.
Yeah.
Happens
true.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aldo and I both have those fish pond nets, and they cradle the fish so nicely, and the hook just
Yeah.
it's gone. Yeah. It's great.
They're really good nets,
Good nuts, and they're made from recycled material.
which isn't.
There you go.
Love a good fish pond.
Sponsor us, Jesus!
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
What else do we need to do, fish pond?
Like, come on, baby.
But you made a larger point too, which is that I think anglers, by and large, are conservationists, right? I mean, we want environments to be maintained, and the licensing fees that we pay go to that. And I never fish without a license. I just think that's the obvious good thing to do, and that money helps to maintain that good water. And I mean, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's one thing I did notice out in the Gas Bay is you definitely see what the high license fees are paying for. Like
Right.
there's offices all along the river. Then I don't think I went a day without seeing a conservation officer. And they all have their own, each river has their own team.
Yeah.
So we were like, because I was chatting with one of them, I was like, so how many officers are there for the area? And he's like, oh, there's, depending on the size of the river, like the river we were fishing, the Bonaventure, has 8. And I think there's 8 for all of Southern Ontario. If you're looking at the disparity in terms of like resource management. But anyway, that's another conversation.
I was going to say, I got busted once in Ontario.
Yeah.
I was up on Lovesick. and I was just noodling with a friend of mine who's not even a serious angler, and the ranger came in.
Oh yeah.
And it turned out that my game card was out of date. I let it lapse. So
Yeah.
that's my bad. And he's like, you know what the law says, right? Not only can I seize your expensive sage rod and all of the flies that you have in your vest, I can take your car.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can take your car or your boat. We didn't have a boat. We were waiting, but
Yeah.
it's like
It's pretty serious.
it's pretty serious,
Yeah.
and it should be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Especially with like so little officers around.
yeah.
Keep people on their toes.
Yeah, like serious poachers are.
Yeah, it's just yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and up there, it's a weird part of Ontario in some ways because people are fishing for carp with like balls of dough and stuff, and
And treble hooks the size of my hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just like fishing. A lot of the fish, most of the fishing world just hasn't caught up. Like talk about that type of stuff. It's like, I mean, because people don't take it. Most people don't take it seriously, right? It's just fishing is like, oh yeah, get a hot dog and a hook and just go snag a catfish. It's like, okay, that's fishing, right? But it's like, Jesus, that seems like really like 1800s type of thinking. It's like the world doesn't really work like that anymore. I think we really need to try to revisit this whole how people see angling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's kind of crazy. I mean, we're coming
like-
into the fall. I was gonna say, but
Yeah, but remember in Indiana, we did a trip in Indiana,
Yeah.
and people would tie.
oh man,
They would tie basically rope with hooks on trees, on the tree branches that overhang the river, and put, like you said, dough or hot dogs. And they'd like check them days later, and there could be a catfish
They just
sitting there for a
leave.
week.
They
just
just leave.
leave.
Man.
they just
And-
let it. What do they call it? Limbing.
Limb
lining.
Limb lining.
Limb
Limb
lining.
lining. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
I was like, what are all
never
these-
heard of that.
We were like, what are all these cables hanging off the trees?
Yeah.
And our guide was like, oh yeah, it's called limb lining, and they attach bait.
to big hooks and they just leave. It's like, Jesus.
Because we got snagged on a bunch of them. That was the thing. I pulled up one, and it was like the hook was as big as this microphone. I was like, what the hell?
That just doesn't seem like fishing to me.
No, exactly. I mean, that's a whole other thing too. With fly fishing, like, have you ever had moments where you think to yourself, like, this doesn't seem like fly fishing? I know you talk about dries a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things is, and this is hard for people to understand if they are not anglers, a lot of so-called fly patterns don't imitate flies, right? I mean, a lot of them do. But I mentioned before, we're fishing terrestrials in British Columbia. So you got these big honking beetle patterns and big ant patterns and grasshoppers and bumblebees and things like that.
Yeah.
And, if you're going for big brookies, you might have a mouse, say. I have this beautiful mouse pattern that I use. So people say, oh, well, how is that a fly? And I guess the main thing is it's not a spoon and there's no bait.
Yeah.
And the bait question is interesting because a lot of people say to me, I'm sure you guys get this too, there are many famous Hemingway stories about fishing. Sun Also Rises has the great sequence about fishing on the, Irrigati in Spain.
Yeah.
But then the classic story is the Big Two-Hearted River, which is in Michigan. And Nick Adams, after he comes back from the war with this grievous wound, he goes out fly fishing and tries to sort of reconstruct his personality. He uses live grasshoppers on hooks. And so a lot of...
How does it stay on the hook?
Well, you put
Have
it
to,
right
yeah.
through, yeah.
Got to bait it.
No, I know,
Yeah.
I get that, but like they're so fragile. I feel like they would split in half as soon as the
Yeah,
hook goes
well,
on.
you got to put the shank so that it's set in the middle of the
through
bug.
it.
Right.
Yeah,
Eef.
yeah. And a lot of anglers would think, well, that's not fly fishing, right? I mean, that's you're being a bait bastard if you do that.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are kind of aesthetic disagreements, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's interesting is when you go back and look at the literature of fly fishing, this debate goes all the way back. It goes back to Isaac Walton in the 15th century, but it goes back actually to Roman treatises on fishing in the 2nd century of the Common Era, where people say, well, is it mimesis? Is it representing what the fly actually looks like? Or is it something else? Is it some kind of befuddlement, right? So when you think about the difference between a match the hatch kind of fly and an attractor pattern, right? An attractor pattern is just when we call it that, it's just like, well, we hope it's going to work.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas, I mean, sometimes you actually get your little eyedropper thingy and you pull out the stomach contacts and see exactly what they're eating, and you try to put on a fly that looks exactly like that.
Yeah.
So I think all of these things, I find it fascinating. I'm not judgmental about it, any more than I would be about other aesthetic things. Like, you want to be a modernist? You want to be a postmodernist? You want to be a neo-traditionalist? I don't care. I just want to know if painting is beautiful or moving or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's true. I know. It's like, for me, it's just fun to talk about like how people define fly fishing, because I don't know. I just know so many people that it's just such a large spectrum, all the way from people who are like, oh, I don't know about Euro nymphing, or it's like, I only do this hatch, like it gets really, which is cool, which is the cool part about it. Yeah. Makes it such an eclectic world,
I know. Well, I mean, I guess probably all of us have had that experience where some guy walks by and says, oh, you're nymphing?
Yeah.
I only do dries.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
classic.
Okay. Yeah. So you're noble and wonderful, and I'm going to catch more fish.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention, so a couple of years ago, more than a couple now, I was on assignment for En Route magazine, the in-flight magazine for Air Canada.
Yep.
They sent me up to this fly fishing lodge, actually not a fly fishing lodge, just a fishing lodge in northwestern Ontario. And I brought my fly rods. And the guides were all like, yeah, you can't use your fly rod here. We're fishing for pike.
Yeah.
And, muskie. Like, these things are honkers.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm really keen to land a pike on my 5-weight, which I did. But you have to have the steel leader, right?
Yeah.
The braided steel leader.
What kind of pike? How big is this pike?
Like a nice 40.
I can show you the picture.
Yeah. I would love to see the picture.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
Was that the Sage? The 5 Sage?
It was the 5 stage.
That rod, man.
Yeah.
That rod, it's been around the world.
Story. You should do a book on just that stage.
Yeah.
A rod well traveled.
Yeah, exactly.
You still have that rod, right?
Oh God, yeah. But the middle section broke. One of the middle sections. But God bless the people at Sage. They replace right away. So
awesome.
Lifetime guarantee.
Yeah. Wicked.
They build the section. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, they just did.
Another sponsor.
Another sponsor.
Yeah. So do you have any trips coming up in the future, like a near future? Anything you're like looking forward to?
Nothing in the near future. I'm hoping. Toronto's kind of tough, right?
Yeah.
Because there's the credit, there's the Grand. You can get on the lake for steelhead. Mm-hmm. There's the Ganaraska. One of my best friends moved to Philadelphia a few years ago, and he's an avid angler. And we used to go on the Saugeen for steelhead. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure I'm going to do any of those this fall, but I kind of like to. And then it might be winter over and getting into next spring.
Yeah. Next spring.
I love the Saugeen.
Yeah, Saugeen's great.
Mm-hmm. Such a beautiful river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big
The Maitland's great too.
Yeah.
I really want to hit fall steelhead on the Maitland this year.
It's a big, beautiful river.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The funny thing when the last time we fished the Saugeen, so we have a guide and he's got a pontoon boat. And we're pushing out into the middle of the river, and these guys are on the shore, with swinging rods.
Yeah.
And they've got row sacks and whatever, right? They're not our people.
Yeah.
And they were so hostile to us because we had this guide, and I thought, wow, that's one of those instant indicators of class difference, right? Because these guys pull up with their pickup trucks and they've got their swingers, and they don't care if it's real row. That if it works, it works. Mm-hmm. And so they were kind of giving us the finger. For being
just because
well we're being poncy, I guess. In their view.
Wow. There is such a crazy divide in anglers in Southern Ontario, like you just see every type of angler, and there is animosity for sure.
I wish there wasn't. Like, we had such a nice experience in Timmins with like some big bass guys, like the guys with like the boats that are
bait casting,
faster than my car kind of thing. And then we were having great chats. And they were
super cool,
Yeah, so I wish it was a little bit more like that. But sometimes it can be pretty hard on these rivers.
Yeah, you just get all kinds of people, all kinds of opinions.
Well, he was looking at, I won't mention anybody's name, but the angler, the bass angler, looked at one of all those flies.
It's probably just because he can't remember his name. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I can't remember his name. Wonderful fella. And it all had this new fly that looked almost like a Rapala, right?
Game changer.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Game changer.
And he's going to use it. He's like, I'm going to fish this, and I'm going to catch an incredible amount of bass.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, we gave it to him.
And I love that because
Yeah.
he's like, he's not looking at it as a divide. He's looking at, how can I be better? You know, what if I took this and use it as inspiration for like this new innovation? You know what I mean? And make everybody else on his lake jealous, right? And I thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. Throw a game changer.
Yeah, on the
behind
flip side, like we make game changers because they look more like Rapalas.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So there you go.
it's like
Is
like
that
a
really
full,
fly
is that
fishing?
full-
Yeah, exactly.
There's
Is
a
that-
whole debate
is that-
about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's so articulated. There's like 6 articulations in it, and it's like just so
no kidding.
ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a full. It looks like if it wasn't for the synthetic material,
Yeah.
it would just look like.
lure.
Okay. Well, you know, when I caught the pike on the 5-weight, I had this big leech pattern. I mean, really big. Like it had a big foam head, and it was probably 8 inches, 9 inches
Yeah.
long.
Yep.
And you know, that's. I mean, it only had one hook on it, but I mean, it pretty much is the same thing as what the spinning guys are using.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I have to say, my nephew on the other side of the family, I managed after many years to convert him to fly fishing. So we've been fishing together for probably 10 years. And I would keep buying him, you know, like beginner rods. I do the Orvis, like Clearwater package or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. And I guess, you know, 10 to 2. That's
Yeah.
how you do your cast. And he's like, oh, shut up. And then finally he went away to college, and apparently he's been practicing his cast in the street out in front of his frat house.
Oh, nice.
And now he's got a super double haul. I
wow.
mean, it's better cast than mine. And so, yeah, that's a success story.
So
I
he's
guess.
gotten into it. He's
Yeah.
going to be right on.
Yeah.
He'll come on the trips and everything else.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's super cool to see, like, especially family get into the sport, you know? So you have people you can go on trips with. I mean, that's what's great about SoFly. So we go on trips together, and we know we're all down. So that's cool. Why don't we just take a second here to just talk about Drift Outfitters? Aldo, what's Drift Outfitters?
Drift Outfitters is an awesome fly shop here in downtown Toronto, but you know what? They actually ship countrywide. So if you're not in Toronto, you can always go on their website at driftoutfitters.com. There's a little link to their web store, and you can see everything they have in store online. You know, you can also give them a phone call and down at the shop, and they'll be happy to help you out and go through anything you need. Their phone number is 647-347-7370. They're a shop, they're an outfitter, and they do a bunch of education and events, and definitely a lot of events over the winter, because you know what? We're not fishing that much.
And some fly tying nights coming up as well. Left Field Brewery, we get together and we head down with the guys from Drift, and we do some fly tying with people in the community, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's going to be on October 2nd at
check that
7
out.
p.m.
Come on out.
You can buy tickets to the Left Field event, or you know what? You can just come to Left Field and hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't feel like tying flies,
Drink
or
some
if you want
beers.
to learn more, just chat with us or the guys from Drift. We'll be there.
Super important to support your local fly shop. So if you haven't been to Drift Outfitters or haven't been in a while, get your butt down there. Mitchie's Fishies 5.
I think so, yeah.
We do 5 questions every show.
Okay.
They're always the same 5 questions, but it's not like a buzzer beater thing. It's just 5
We're
more
excited for
questions.
your answers.
I'm allowed to think about
You
it.
can
Yeah.
talk as long as you want about each one.
Okay.
But we just like asking these exact same questions to all of our guests.
Excellent.
So the first one is, what is your favorite fish and why?
I think my favorite fish is brown trout, and because they're wily, spooky. All the other trout are a little more aggressive in my experience. So yeah, catching a brown is a big deal for me.
Best.
Yeah.
I love brown trout.
Yeah.
Did you get any really nice brown trout this year?
No, I haven't caught a brown trout in probably 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Uh-oh.
Lots of rainbows, lots of cutties,
Yeah.
cut bows.
Yeah.
Nice.
I caught a brown. I did what they call the what is it, the Blackfoot Grand Slam in Montana. So I got a cutty, a cut bow, a rainbow, and a brown on the same day.
That's
Nice.
so sick. That's an awesome day.
Yeah.
That is an awesome day.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But the brown is the hardest.
And on the
right?
Blackfoot,
it's a bit like
Brad Pitt.
Right.
He fishes the Blackfoot.
Yeah.
there you go.
So it's a bit like when you're hitting for the cycle. Like the hardest is the triple, right? Like a single and a double and a home run are actually a lot easier statistically than the triple. So when you get the triple, you think, okay, I'm on the way.
Here we
to
go.
the cycle. Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. Such a good day. And upstate New York Browns too. I love those fish.
Oh my God.
Love those
On the
fish.
Ausable.
Oh man. So number 2 is if you could fish anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why?
New Zealand.
That was easy.
That was easy.
Yeah.
For the Browns.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a lot of places in North America. I've been, Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia, Montana, New York. And I used to live in Scotland, although I didn't fish there. So I'd love to do that. But when I talk to my friends who've been to New Zealand for, some of those little pools and the hiking,
New Zealand.
that or maybe Argentina. I mean, those are kind of close to each other. But I'd probably pick New Zealand first.
Great answer.
It's
Looks
like
amazing.
Lord of the Rings land, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Giant fish.
Yeah.
Fly fishing mecca. Whereabouts in Glasgow? In Scotland did you live? Was it
I lived in Edinburgh
Edinburgh?
for a couple of years. Yeah,
Nice.
when I was in graduate school.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Where
And
did you
there's-
go?
I was just recently in Edinburgh and Glasgow, and because my girlfriend was living in Glasgow for a while. I just passed all the rivers, and I'm like, oh my god, why am I not fishing right now?
You know what? It's actually right now for Canadians, it's quite affordable because the airfare and the exchange rate are favorable. So you can go on the Tweed, for example,
Yeah.
which is the river basically that separates Scotland and England, and guided trips for a day, half day, really reasonable. And then you can go up, way north.
Yeah,
and
do some of the locks and stuff.
Yeah.
Man. Might be a good trip next year, guys. Jeez, be cool.
Yeah, one step
Fish,
at a time.
fish for Nessie. Go to Loch Ness, try to hook Nessie. Can you imagine that video?
On a barbless.
Yilma died. Such a crazy lake, massive waves.
They do say she's an eel, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have caught eels. I've caught eels.
I caught a dead eel in the Ottawa River once.
Oh no,
I don't know.
American eel?
That doesn't count.
No.
No.
Catching eel, was it on a fly rod? Mm-hmm. Whoa, crazy.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Well, we were fishing this same different chalk stream actually in Wiltshire in England, and looking for browns. But I was getting skunked. My buddy Julian, who I mentioned before, who's now in Philadelphia, he got a couple of beautiful browns that we had for dinner that night, and all I hooked into was an eel.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's I mean,
Kind of interesting. though.
it's kind of interesting, and you can eat them if you want, though.
Yeah.
They sell them in some of those fish and chip shops.
Yeah.
But I threw it back.
That's cool, man. What fly was it on?
Oh God, it was so long ago.
I know,
I'm
it's
not
such
even
a-
sure I can
such
remember.
a specific thing, but it was
Yeah.
just interesting,
I'd be
like an
interested
eel
to know
taking
what
a
fly an eel would take.
yeah. It's crazy.
I specialize in eel flies.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I'm sure there's someone out there. Number 3 is what is your best or favorite fishing memory?
Well, I already mentioned catching that brown on the Grand.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll pick something else. I think maybe my best memory, and I talk about this right at the end of Catch and Release. We were on this lake, Beaver Lake, near Kelowna, and really nasty storm blew up. And we were on the far side of this quite big lake. So we're in these aluminum boats, right, with 75s on them. And so like going flat out, you're still not making much headway.
Yeah.
And we're trying to beat the rain, and we didn't. We got completely drenched, freezing. It was like hail, actually. And we finally made the cabin, fixed the boats to the dock, and I walked in, and my dad was there, and he'd made stew for dinner, beef stew, and he had the red wine open, and it was just great to be home.
Yeah.
The fire was going.
It's just one of those perfect, like, this
That's
was a
great.
good day.
That's a great scene.
Yeah.
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 Oh, you're all like you're freezing and then
Yeah.
you get all
Oh,
like
man.
warm.
Yeah.
Cozy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Red wine.
I can
going.
fall asleep right now.
I love those moments. I love those moments. Number 4 is why do you fly fish? Why fly fish at all?
Well, we talked some distance about the spiritual stuff, and I do think that's important to me. And I think the fellowship, I mean, it's hard to explain exactly what that means, but I think of it now in terms of people who are gone. So my good friend Paul Quarrington, who was a great angler, I only got to fish with him a couple of times before he died. He died way too young. And those memories about that kind of, like just being on the boat with somebody or walking the same part of the stream with somebody else, I think that's probably, let's say 70% of it. And then the other 30% is, just that incomparable feeling when you hook something. Mm-hmm. And I guess the way to sort of specify that is you get out on a piece of water. Suppose you haven't fished it before, or it's a different time, different part of the season, and you tie a fly on and you throw it out. And there could be a long period before you get anything. Mm-hmm. And you might get nothing, right? For minutes, even hours. And then you hook into something. And then you know that you made the right decision, right? In fact, you made a whole bunch of decisions. You made a dozen decisions after you left the cabin or whatever to get to that place. The weight of the rod, the line, how long your leader is, the weight of the tippet, which fly you picked. And then when you hook in, you think, okay, I did it.
Yeah.
I did it again.
Yeah.
And I think it just feels great to know that you have this application of skill that succeeds. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the 30%. But I would say the 70% is just being around other people who love to fish.
Mm-hmm. And the memories you take away too, Yeah. Because like you said, getting, even if you just got to fish for a short time with your friend, it's like that river's not going to change and it's going to be there forever. And it's, you leave with all those memories. It's true. And you can go back and visit it. Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm so excited I get to ask you this next one. I'm so stoked about this.
We're all stoked about this.
This is always our favorite.
It's always our favorite.
Okay, I'm getting a little nervous now, but
we've got Mark Kingwell here.
It's actually the lightest one, I think.
Yeah, it's a fun one. Yeah. It's what fly pattern represents you best and why.
Like if you were a fly,
what would you be?
What would you be?
Oh man. Well, I don't know. That's such a weird question.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the best. I love it.
I think I probably had on my line more than any other fly a prince nymph, but I'm not going to pick that because it's too boring. Although it's a great fly.
Yeah, it's a great
fly. And Mr. Prince did all of us anglers a great service by tying that fly because that pattern slays everywhere.
Everywhere.
I think you know what? I'm going to go with the Royal Coachman.
Nice. That's awesome.
Great answer.
Yeah.
I love that fly.
And why? Why the Royal Coachman?
Well, I mean, first of all, I love the name. Yeah. Always have. And long before I ever put a line in the water, I knew the names of some flies for different reasons. I mean, way back in the day when I was an undergraduate at U of T, I read Isaac Walton just as literature and sort of became fascinated with that whole culture that he celebrates. And actually, I'm not sure if the Royal Coachman it postdates him. Probably does. I can't remember. But I just love the names of flies. Yeah. And there's so many great names. Tup's Indispensable, and all of these things. But yeah, Royal Coachman just sounds like it's class A.
I love it. I love that answer. It is. It's a beautiful fly too.
Yeah, it's a great brook trout fly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's it for Mitchie's Fishies 5.
Okay.
I love those answers. Were amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. We hardly we haven't heard that one. Yeah.
Nope.
Royal Coachman.
Nope. I don't even know if we've heard a dry fly.
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, really? So what do people pick?
We get woolly bugger a lot.
Woolly bugger a lot. Yeah. Oh, and Atlantic salmon fly. We got one.
Well, Chloe picked the Bitch Creek.
That was funny. Chloe picked the Bitch
Creek.
That was funny.
People do have there are the thing that I'm happy about is though we do hear we have heard woolly bugger a few times, the responses about why are always different, which is cool. And also the cheering, just like really the different flies. We have heard like variety, which is neat because it's like people really are thinking about it, which is cool because it's like like what fly would I be? What about that fly makes me represents me? And I think the Royal Coachman is really cool.
Yeah,
it's great.
Thank
you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Man.
It's been a real pleasure.
It has been so much
nice
fun.
Awesome. I feel like we could go for a couple more hours.
Oh, we could.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you back on the show again.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go fish the Saugeen.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put that out there.
It's true too.
Or the
Steelhead
Maitland.
season's coming.
Yeah, it's
Or the
coming.
Maitland.
It's
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
Or the Maitland. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have not fished the Maitland.
Oh, the Maitland is.
Yeah.
Whew,
I had the
beautiful
best
river.
time of my life on that.
Wow, it's so nice.
Yeah.
You were,
I know.
Aldo gave me the front of the drift boat. You know what I mean? He's like, no, this is your time.
It's two for one.
Yeah.
Front to back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he knew what he was doing. He's like, he almost going to catch steelhead. That was magical.
That's a generous friend right
Yeah.
there.
It is.
I've caught steelhead before, so.
It's Yilma's first steelhead.
Yilma's first steelhead.
But I mean, no, he usually puts me first. He's like that.
Aldo, where can people find SoFly stuff?
Well, you can find all of our stuff at sofly.ca. You can find our podcasts, find our videos, see our Instagram feed. Our Instagram is at the SoFly Crew on Instagram. You can reach out to us at thesoflycrew@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or guest suggestions. We get those from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
We get some feedback. And we appreciate it. Mark, thanks for coming on. Is there any? Do you want to do any plug? Where can people find your
Any
books?
articles coming
Any
out?
articles
Well,
coming out? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, this is not at all to do with fishing, but I do have a new book out, 2019, called "Wish I Were Here: Boredom and the Interface."
Awesome.
And it's
That's something I want to talk about.
it's kind of related because
You talk about boredom in
talking
catch.
about boredom, yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea of boredom and whether you're bored when you're fishing and what boredom is, and good boredom and bad boredom, as I discuss it in the book. So if people are interested
super
in boredom
interesting.
and technology, which is what the book is about, the recent book, but it does hook up, so to say,
Yeah.
with fishing stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, because again, we could go for a long time, but active waiting is not the same thing as boredom, and that's
Right.
one of the arguments I make in Catch and Release.
Is
So,
that instead of reaching for the phone, you think?
that's right?
Right.
You dwell in the moment,
Yeah.
and that's why the title is "Wish I Were Here," because we have such a difficult time lately being in the moment and just being present. Because we're always swiping, we're always thinking about something else, and so on and so on.
There's always
So,
something else we could be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what was really funny too? Just on that note, I was with on the salmon trip. I was with the guy who owns the fly shop Drift, and Rob was saying, "Oh, it's so nice fishing in a place where you don't have service, because if I'm bored or if the fishing's slow or whatever, he'll grab for his phone."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm not doing that now.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, or I lie down, or I eat, or I think about what I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
why aren't they biting?
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong? Or
Look at that bird.
yeah."
That's a cool bird.
But actually though, like taking
Yeah.
in as opposed to
It's a gift, you
Yeah,
know. It really
it
is.
is.
And the first couple of parts of it are maybe painful because you're like, oh no, I need stimulus.
Yeah.
But then when you get inside it, it's like, oh, what was I worried about? You know, this is awesome to just be here and look at the sky and think about what I should tie on next or whatever. You know, that's
Yeah.
great.
I should have taken a page out of that book for my trip last weekend with these guys. Just
Yeah.
back and forth on my phone.
I mean, it's we're
Oh
all
my
guilty
God.
of it, right?
Yeah.
Leave it at the cabin.
I got 2 hours average a day. Is it 2 hours a day? Yeah, 2 hours a day on Instagram. That's terrible.
that's crazy.
We're
average.
working on
You're
it.
not even a social media manager.
We're working
I'm
on
not
it.
even a social media man.
Is that book out right now, or is
Yeah.
It came out in April, so people can find it on Amazon and lots of places. So,
amazing?
Digital download, hard copy.
Yep.
Yep.
All of those. There's an audiobook too. So
Oh, wow.
if
Perfect.
yeah, if you want to listen to
So
it
he
on
can
your
listen
phone,
to it while he's on
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah.
Definitely gonna check that book out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, man. Honestly,
Thanks,
it's been
guys.
an
Yeah.
honor. It was super cool talking, and hopefully we get to do it again one
Yeah,
day.
I'd love that, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Awesome.
That's it for me, Mitch, Aldo,
Bye bye.
and Yilma.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening.